Now, today is Positive Twitter Day, which is aimed at encouraging users to be a little kinder and to disagree in a more respectful way. Well, in the past, the social media giant's been criticised for failing to get to grips with trolls or removing offensive content. But with divisions over Brexit and further afield President Trump, is Twitter already beyond repair? Well, joining me now live from central London is the editor of Spiked Online, Brendan O'Neill, and the senior editor at Novara Media, Ash Sarkar. Very good afternoon to you both. Ash, if I may begin with you, you personally have received quite a lot of abuse through Twitter. Just give us an insight into what that can be like for anyone that's not used Twitter much themselves.
So the first time I had a large volume of abusive or harassing or racist tweets on Twitter was actually before I had much of a public profile. And what had happened was I'd been filmed at a migrant solidarity demo. That bit of footage had been distributed through far-right accounts, and there was a coordinated attempt to vilify me. Now, the content itself didn't breach Twitter's terms of use, but the sort of behaviour that it encouraged, which included sending me pictures of dead bodies, which included death threats, which included rape threats, which included threats against my baby niece, that very much did breach Twitter's terms of use. The problem is that it was happening at such a huge volume that I couldn't report them all. You know, that would have taken so much time and would have required me to look through so many of them that in itself would have been detrimental. So at that point, Twitter's safety procedures weren't good for dealing with incidents of targeted harassment at that kind of scale. I would say that has improved somewhat in the intervening years. However, there is still a problem by which Twitter will take action on incidents of harassment or racist abuse when there is a critical mass of reports, particularly from accounts who've got the so-called blue tick. Now, what that means is if you're not someone with a huge amount of followers, or if you're not someone who has that blue tick, is considered a public figure, it means that the reports that you make of harassment or abuse or personal information being shared when you don't want it to will be considered of lower priority. So again, we have a problem where Twitter's creating a hierarchy of users in terms of safety. You've got ones who are public figures who are more able to have accounts be suspended or tweets taken down, whereas if you don't have that kind of privilege, you're less likely to have that kind of action taken.
Let's bring in Brendan O'Neill to this debate because, you know, Twitter's an incredible tool. Lots of journalists rely on it for their job. It gives us direct access to people of power. But it has been seen time and again, hasn't it, to also be a way for people to target hate in many ways.
Yeah, obviously, it's a very free platform, or it used to be a very free platform. And when you create a free platform, you invite all sorts of opinion, not only sensible, rational, reasoned opinion, but also people saying crazy stuff and racist stuff and hateful stuff as well. That's in the nature of the platform, I think. But I take the polar opposite view of Ash, I think, on this issue, because I'm not worried about the rabble on Twitter. I'm not worried about the idiot in his bedroom who flings off racist tweets at Ash or Diane Abbott or me as well. In fact, I get a lot of anti-Irish racism coming my way, both on social media and in my email inbox all the time these days. And I'm not particularly worried about those people because they are, I think, incredibly isolated. What I'm worried about is the way in which the establishment uses Twitter to express loathing for ordinary people, because what's increasingly happened is that the woke bourgeoisie, the kind of left-leaning sections of the political establishment, increasingly use Twitter to express their own form of prejudice and their own form of contempt for gammons, for example. Gammon is effectively the new phrase for chav. It's a kind of anti-working class phrase. Or they will attack Brexit voters, particularly working class Brexit voters, who they assume to be stupid and fascistic. Or they will attack feminists who criticise transgenderism. There are all these ways in which the establishment itself, through social media, through the politics of identity, will use this medium to attack huge swathes of the public. So the thing that worries me most about hatefulness on Twitter is not the idiots who are kind of just firing off tweets because they've got nothing better to do in their lives. It's the way in which the establishment itself uses Twitter to assert its own moral authority over the throng.
dare I say that both are a bad thing, Brendan O'Neill. I mean, I'm glad to hear that you're not concerned about it, but if a woman is receiving threats that she's going to be raped, for example, they've got good cause to be worried about that, surely.
Of course they have, and I'm not saying I'm not concerned about it. What I'm saying is I don't think it's the major problem. I mean, I get death threats. I had a bag of human excrement hand-delivered to my office. I've had death threats. I've had people saying I should be strung up in public. People call me a super, which is an Irish phrase meaning Uncle Tom. I get abuse every single day, and it's not pleasant.
Ash
But
Sarkar,
the point I'm making...
Go on.
I would like to come in here because I know what you're saying, that, you know, it's not the idiot or sado in his bedroom that poses a risk. But in my experience, that very dismissal of the idiot or sado in his bedroom actually put me at risk, because what happened was back in 2018, I received a series of death threats, including mutilated animal imagery, and because that was just part of you know, the sort of everyday deluge of racist abuse that I get, I ignored it. A few months later, I was contacted by a journalist from CNN because the individual who had sent me those death threats turned out to be the same man who'd been sending pipe bombs to Joe Biden, Robert De Niro, Barack Obama. Luckily for me, he was too cheap to fork out for international delivery. But because I had ignored it at that time, and because I hadn't reported it at that time, it meant that I was putting myself at risk. Now, I'm not saying that nastiness or indeed condescension or various forms of dismissal is unique to one portion of Twitter. But you know what? I'm not here to make it illegal to have bad opinions. I think that is a God-given human right. For me, the issue is the way in which harassment on Twitter bleeds out and has real-life consequences, particularly of violence.
OK, well, let's not, you know, debate which form is worse. I mean, a lot of people would say both are terrible. Let's talk about the fact that we're given this opportunity to try and make Twitter a positive thing. Is it possible to turn it around and do that, or do you think we're too far gone? And I'll put that to you, Brendan O'Neill, first of all.
I don't think Twitter is a salvageable medium. I think it's become a pretty nasty place. It's got some nasty people in it. That's the way it works. I think the key problem with Twitter and other forms of social media is that they do become an echo chamber. They do become a place in which people's opinions are reinforced, or they create a situation in which their opinions are reinforced. And that gives rise to dogmatic thinking, that gives rise to lazy thinking, and that gives rise to an idea that anyone who criticizes you or anyone who disagrees with you is evil and wicked and nasty and deserving of complete degradation. And the point I'm making is that it's not just, you know, comfortable journalists like me and Ash and politicians who get paid pretty well and have a fairly nice life. It's not just people like us who are getting abuse. I think actually we've got pretty thick necks and we can handle it. The thing I'm concerned about is how the echo chamber, the kind of narrow-minded nature of this medium, means that quite powerful figures, including politicians themselves, can use it to cast disdain amongst all sorts of people, all sorts of ordinary people. That's the dynamic that worries me more. OK,
no hope for Twitter for Brendan. What about you, Ash?
I think that one big thing that Twitter can do is enforce its terms of use more evenly, because Brendan's right. It's not just people who are public figures who get abuse. There was a case recently where I found a network of accounts which had been dedicated not just to sharing screenshots of you know, the cleavage of women who had been on TV, including Sky News' very own Sarah Jane Mee, but had been using this network of accounts to distribute pictures of women that had been taken without their consent, some of whom looked to be under the age of consent themselves. And the only reason why action had been taken on those accounts by Twitter was because women who have some kind of public profile had sounded the alarm on it. And I think that's terrible. I think that all women should be able to expect that their personal information will be kept safe on Twitter, and that pictures of them, creep shots, upskirt photos won't be shared without their consent.
OK, Ash Sarkar, Brendan
Twitter's able to take action on that.
OK, thank you both very much for your thoughts this afternoon. I'm tempted to ask the audience to get in touch on Twitter and let us know what they think, but only if it's positive.